You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again to gather here together for the bi-weekly options extravaganza known as the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-scintillating network upon which so many of you are binging. By the way, I don't get around to saying hello and welcoming to all of the new folks who keep joining us in the Secret Club all the time. Welcome to all of you out there. I know the new year has been a particularly robust period. A lot of people look like they're getting interested again in the world of options, and they want to take their trading to the next level. They want to get the live stuff. They want to get the exclusive stuff. Love the members from all over the world, too. That's really been fun to see, including my producers told me this morning, our first Secret Club member from Vietnam. I know we see them a lot from Europe and Australia and a lot of other parts of the world, not so many from Vietnam. So that's always fun to see new countries making it into the Secret Club. Where do you go to learn more? TheOptionsinsider.com/Secret Club is the place to go to join the worldwide party. Of course, however you listen live after the fact, we do love you all. Keep sending in those questions, those comments. We do love to hear from all of you, especially on a day like today. It is Mail Block Thursday after all. So if you haven't taken advantage of that, of course, all you in the Secret Club can bump it up to the live and get bumped to the top of the list. And let's see who's joining me on the old program today. First, let's go out to the quiet, nay the sleepy, nay the tranquil hamlet known as St. Charles, where we are joined once again by the uncleist of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here.
And Mr. Uncle Mike, I do have a surprise for you. I know it's not the Monday show. It's not the Guess That 80s Wrestler show, but I have to just cut in with this because it is so timely and so fun. I was dragged, maybe not so willingly, but I was dragged to a recent wrestling event in Chicago last night. My little guy did want to go see the return of CM Punk to Chicago. He was excited about that. So we did it socially distanced, stayed away from people, double masked, the whole 9 yards. Wasn't a huge fan of being in crowds, but we did it nonetheless. It was fun. We made it the safest way you could do it in an event like this. And lo and behold, Uncle Mike, who should come out about halfway through the show, my little guy elbows me and goes, "Dad, I think that's Jake the Snake Roberts." And sure enough, it was Jake the Snake. A stone's throw from me, Uncle Mike, Jake the Snake Roberts. If I had a beer in my hand, I could have thrown it and hit him. What say you to that revelation, that stunning revelation?
Well, I wouldn't want to throw any stones or beers at Jake the Snake. He'd give you the DDT and put Damien on you. But I think that's really cool. I think it's good that Jake the Snake is still active in the wrestling world. That's just really cool that you got to experience that with your son. I'm envious. I wish my son liked pro wrestling. My son just likes this football nonsense that I got to deal with.
Yeah, the football. He likes that too. But yeah, it's funny because if I had known Jake the Snake was going to be there, I probably would have been a little bit less reticent to go check it out. I was like, oh, this AEW, I don't know these guys. But yeah, Jake the Snake comes out, kind of changes the tune out there. And you know who else is excited just tangentially from hearing about Jake the Snake, because he loves nothing. We've got him into it now, listeners. He won't shut up. He's IMing us. He's DMing us. He's emailing us all the time questions about 80s wrestling. It is the Rock Lobster himself, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. Rock Lobster, welcome back to the program. And as I told you before the show, we can't talk nothing but 80s wrestling the entire show. We have to talk some options. I know you want to talk more 80s. That'll be Monday. Okay, sir?
Well, my question is, how did you see him if he's wearing a mask? Was his whole head covered?
Well, he wasn't. The wrestlers don't wear the mask, and the managers don't wear. He was on a microphone talking. Yes.
Just the hoi polloi in the audience watching the whole.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, you can't get COVID from a wrestling event. COVID respects wrestling.
Of course,
it does. I think it's outside the purview of the WWE. They do not allow the COVID in the wrestling.
Let alone the guy maybe a few seats from me who didn't really want to wear a mask the whole time. Who I was considering giving a DDT to halfway through the show. I restrained myself as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And quite a bit of red on the screen, a bit of a departure from what we've seen earlier in the week, where it seemed like the markets were determined to recover from the aggressive sell-offs that we've had throughout the rest of the previous week. And of course, the whipsaws. We didn't even see a lot of those reversals and reversions that we've been seeing out there a lot of late, where the market sells off in the morning, then it rallies, or it rallies in the morning, then it sells off. We had pretty much an uninterrupted upward trajectory for most of the week. Coming into today, though, that's changing a little bit. Some big names popping off in the after hours. Not exactly lighting the world on fire. Facebook, they came for Facebook last night, off almost 25%. At one point there in the after hours, just a drubbing there in Facebook land. Apparently, everyone who's going to use Facebook is on Facebook now. So new user growth, new user acquisition, maybe a little bit of a challenge. Obviously, other areas are dragging on them as well. The Oculus division sounds like it's not exactly burning up the profit charts and a bunch of other things. Of course, the threat of tech regulation lingering over all of these big tech names. It seems like the only thing they can agree upon on both sides of the aisle is that they both hate big tech and they're coming for them. So all of that laying over them, all that weighing on the markets today as well. Snap and others also not exactly lighting the world on fire. That means coming into showtime, we are seeing pretty much all the major indices off nearly 1%, if not more. The Dow holding out the laggard right around that 1% level to the dark side. S&P off about 1.75% when we kicked off the show. NASDAQ off 2.65%. When we kicked off the show. That means when we came into the showtime, and right now we're seeing vol continuing to tick back up after coming off most of the week. Coming into the start of the show, we had VIX cash right around the 24 handle. That puts it down about 1.5 points from last show. So still down from Monday's show, but getting a lot of that back. I wouldn't be surprised if we continue on this trajectory that we're unched by the latter portion of the end of this show even. VVIX, of course, the vol at about a 122. That's down about 6 points, so not quite at that pandemic 150 level or above, but frothy, still pretty juicy out there. VXX at about a 20 2/3. That puts it down a little over a point from where it was this time last show. UVXY, same deal, was at a 14.35 when we kicked off the show. That puts it down a little over a point as well. Wouldn't be surprised if that one has UVXY up to about 14.70 or so now, so that's down less than the point from Monday's show. And Vol Q, of course, NASDAQ feeling its oats to the dark side there, off well over 2% right now. Vol Q, the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ, at about a 27.75 when we kicked off the show. That was the only one that was already up on the week. I was up about 0.75 of a point. So Vol Q. NASDAQ this whole time has really been leading the charge to the upside and to the downside. So a lot to unpack. I know he's giddy about Jake the Snake, so let's go out to him first. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir. Giddy about that, maybe not so giddy about these markets, which are decidedly not Uncle Mike type of markets, sir.
I would say that this market is kind of going through a metamorphosis. Would you agree?
How long have you been sitting on that one, sir? And may I suggest you put it back where you found it?
All morning. Thought of it early in the morning. I've been looking forward to the show all day.
Nothing better than a pun to put a smile on Uncle Mike's face. That's why we call him Uncle Mike. Is that not the unklest of jokes, listeners?
Oh, that's a bad one, I know, but nonetheless, it is. But anyway, just in looking at this, I think that there's just a lot of fear right now with what Facebook is doing. Just that the market feels that Facebook, the fact that they're not getting any more user growth, could be a bad thing. Meta's kind of an interesting stock, I think, in general, because just with the metaverse that's going on, with people that are paying for online real estate, and I'm not talking real estate. I'm talking real estate that exists only in the online world, and it's a very interesting story. So I'm not sure that. If I did individual stocks, I would consider taking a position in Facebook off of this giant drop for what's been happening with it for the longer term, of course. But I like, just in looking at some of the other names in it, Apple's down 0.4% on the day today. When you look at that, that's kind of more of an accurate representation of where the real world is, so to speak. Google is down with the S&P, whereas like the Qs, they're down 3%. Google's just kind of matching the S&P right now. Netflix is something to where it is down with the NASDAQ being driven down like it is. It's actually down more. It's down over 4%. So we're getting kind of a mixed message from the FANGs, if you will. And then, of course, with Facebook itself, or I'm sorry, I should say Meta, even though I really don't like saying Meta, that's down 26%. And then when you get a name like Facebook being down such an insane amount of money, that's what's dragging down the market. There's no doubt in my mind about that. We can talk all we want about rates going up. We can talk all we want about the Ukraine. When a big stock like Facebook gets that much of a hit taken to it, it's just not going to be good for the market as a whole. For some clients, I actually do have a skew position in Facebook to where I was able to set it up to where it was a zero cost, zero risk trade, to where the calls were priced so much higher than the puts. I could go 2 years out, and not every client has the same strike price, but essentially I could have it set up to where over the course of 2 years, you get between roughly a 0 to 6 to 8% rate of return over the course of 2 years, but you're guaranteed to not lose anything. Looks like that trade's not going to end up so well, but we got 2 years to have it come back. We'll see. So that is one position that I have in it, but that was based on the fact that Facebook has really nice options on it, or it had just the call skew. There was more calls trading than the puts, or more call buyers than the puts. So that was one I wanted to take advantage of. So I think that's just the big story right now is this going to trickle into other things? Not to steal too much thunder from around the block, but we do have non-farm coming tomorrow. So that is something that could play a factor into the markets. But for right now, I think that it's just the fact that arguably one of the top 5, top 8 stocks in the entire stock market is down 26%. I think that kind of bodes well for this market. Plus the fact that we have been rallying. I believe this is the first time that the S&P is down in 5 days, and we're going to have a pullback. But the fact that one of the big dogs, which Meta is, can go down 26%, and we're only down a little over 1.5% in the market after the market's been rallying like it has for the past few days, I'm kind of bullish, honestly. But that's just me. I'm always bullish. That's all I got.
Somehow I knew you could turn Facebook selling off 26% into a bullish narrative. That's why I go to you first on days like this, to give people a ray of sunshine. Uncle Mike, ever the optimist out there, loving himself a little bit of the old FB. By the way, I always thought Alphabet was the worst artist formerly known as, but Meta has definitely given it a run for its money. I do not like Meta. And the fact that now it has been adopted, everyone's talking about the metaverse, Meta. they have not done any favors to society by promulgating that name out there. But yeah, beaten up 26% to the dark side right now. Who thought we'd been saying that out there in Facebook land? Mr. Rock Lobster, we turn our gaze to you now and to your usually mild mannered. A day like today, we're not quite busting out the logins, but we are logins adjacent, at least right now. Maybe we also want to hear from your not mild-mannered alter ego, Volmancer.
Well, Volman is so here is what I would say is, okay, I'll give you a guess right now. Seeing the kind of the action in the queue, what would you guess 9-day vol and VIX is right now with VIX trading 24.18? Yeah, I'll make it easy for you. Is it much higher than 24 or is it much lower than 24, about 24?
9-day realized in VIX options?
No, 9-day VIX, just the 9-day VIX.
Oh, just the 9-day VIX. Okay. I'm going to say it is 9-day above 24.
Right. You would think, right, that this sell-off is producing a lot of angst in the short-term options, right? Looking for, it's not. It's dead flat to the cash. It's 24.26 as I'm taking a snap right now.
The 9 days is a pretty volatile frame of reference. A lot has happened in 9 days.
It is, right? But you would think that you would be seeing the 9-day trading at a premium, right? Like a pretty fair premium to the cash VIX in a market that's starting to sell off, right? Because as the market sells off and people freak out, they're going to look for the short term because that's where the cheap bang for the buck is. And vol generally goes up, and you have that kind of backwardated curve. And that's what I agree with Mike. I normally do because, of course, we both live in the middle of nowhere. So that's pretty why we agree with each other, as opposed to the city boy, the city slicker that goes to the big shows and watches famous professional wrestling.
All I'm saying is Jake the Snake doesn't come to the shores of Maine, all right? He comes to downtown Chicago. That's all I'm saying. Maybe he does fish out there. I can see that, but he's not on a microphone on the shores of Maine. That's all I'm saying.
No, exactly. Oh, okay, it's a takedown. So what I find that there is not enough of a lift in VIX to support the sell-off. So I don't think we're going to have like the sell-off is sort of. I agree. I think it's limited to Facebook. I also think that, I think Facebook is dealing with its own problems, right? Try to think of a company that's had worse press in the last year than Facebook, with all this censoring and the this and the that and the internal breaks from all those whistleblowers. And so I think Facebook has turned some people off and they've lost users. And another thing is Apple seems to have kicked them in the teeth with the way they've kind of steered the advertising data, giving people a choice to kind of opt out. So Facebook they've been growing at an amazing pace as a company. So they had one of those earnings where, just stuff slowed down a little bit. And I think, well, rightly so. Now, the second part that Mike talked about is, I don't know if you remember, but Facebook IPO'd. And, it's mostly just a computer app, right, in the early days. And it was like, remember that $40 IPO? And then, like, everybody was just, Facebook, even though it was profitable, I think they sold it to the team.
Yeah, they crushed it. They crushed it right after the IPO, yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, this stock sucks. And all the people are like, I'm a believer at 40. And then it went to 17. And then, of course, very few believers when a stock is down over 50%. So, and then what happened, what I thought anyway, at least I was watching it, is, okay, are they going to make the move to the phone? Like, that's what Zuckerberg basically is like, he went all in, right? And so, people like him or don't like him or whatever. But he's like, we're going all in and getting on everybody's device, which I would argue probably set the stage for the next, 7, 8 years of Facebook growth, all through the phone, right? And then it becomes then you have the pandemic, and so now he says, okay, the next big thing could be this virtual space, and I'm going to go spend a ton of money on it. And and he's making another big, what I would call like setting the tone for the company for the next 10 years. So you can agree with them or disagree with them. I think they should do a lot better job of free speech and all that, but those are all political things. But this whole thing, like if he's right, okay, we're going to set up a virtual world. Now, I think the stocks of a lot of the chip stocks went like crazy on that news. So you think about it like, wow, this, my guess is probably a buying opportunity. And I definitely have quandaries on, like, I will trade the thing. I actually closed some short puts on it yesterday before, right? Like literally 5 minutes before the close. I'm like, this is up enough. I made my money and I'll just see what happens tomorrow. So I'll be selling a strike like $75 lower, which is hard to believe today. So I have, but I'll still trade it. I'm still like, I'm a little bit mercenary like that. But like he's betting the whole, he's like making a bet on something huge that nobody knew exactly that the phones would take over as big as they took over when he did that in 2012 or whatever, 2013. Phones were big and it was like, ooh, everybody's getting like, it was still an Apple BlackBerry thing. Clearly the right decision. So now he's doing the next big bet. How much will it cost? What will this metaverse look like? Who knows, right? Nobody knows. But I think it's an interesting proposition nonetheless. And he could probably already see, right, like that. And it probably is no small thing that like, wow, I could get screwed by Apple or I could get screwed by Google on advertising somehow. So I need to create my own internal space, right? So my guess is this is the next big bet. I don't know. I think it'll decide whether the company becomes a $2.5 trillion market cap company if he creates some kind of space like this. So again, like Mike said, very interesting. I think there's a lot of interesting technology things right now. The market, we got a relatively high realized vol. There's people are sketchy, and so they're just dumping the stock because they're worried, right? But anyway, I think it's an interesting time. And you're basically making a bet on, can Facebook create right now? Like they certainly are going to have revenues, right? But are they going to have the breakneck growth they've had over the last 10 years? Probably not, unless they're able to create like a new universe, right? Which is what they're trying to do. So again, I think that's the bet you're making right now if you buy Facebook at this level. So see what happens. I think it's easier just to sell puts that are $70 of money and just wait and see what happens. Because Facebook still makes a lot of money. They do have a lot of cash, but that doesn't mean the stock can't swing, another down 10%, up 10%, whatever, on a between now and, the next 6 months, which I think is going to be, like, you have to think about it. Is it going to be a dead money stock for the next 6 months? Because of they're investing in growth. And when you invest in growth, stocks don't do much. So I think that's where we find ourselves. But as far as Volman goes, seeing the VIX curve flat, and actually I'm seeing 9-day vol now drop below VIX. That is never a bullish sign for VIX and is usually a bullish sign for SPX. So I've got another couple of put flies I got to close in SPY right now, so I probably better do it because the sell-off that I was looking for is not going to materialize. It made a little bit, but we didn't get the big humdinger so far. So anyway, Volman is noticing the flatter curve is usually ends up being better for SPX in the next day or two and not as good for VIX. So that's what Volman sees right now. And unless that changes by the end of the day, we're probably going to see a little bit of rally in SPX from here and probably a recovery tomorrow in SPX. So if that vol holds up, because people are going to start voting with their feet and their dollars.
I thought I was tossing it to my resident cynic, but here you are giving us this optimistic look at them. I'm going to turn around. Balls are going to start coming in. Look at you, Uncle Mike, in it here on the show, Mr. Rock. Don't you know your role on the show by now, sir? He's the optimist. You're the cynic. Counterpoints out there. But yes, intriguing stuff afoot here. Let's see what's lighting it up from an overall markets perspective right now. And VIX kind of agreeing with the Rock Lobster. They're not blowing the doors off from a volume perspective. It's actually pretty much right where it should be, I suppose, at about 320,000 contracts. That's almost exactly half of its ADV. Its ADV, it's about 640. It's at about 318 right now. So pretty much halfway there. So VIX is telling you it's kind of a mostly normal day. That ADV has ticked up, obviously, 640. Getting close to that 700K level again that we were at not too long ago, then abandoned very quickly. Got back down to the 400,000 level, and now back up to 640, given all the action we talked about in those last 9 days, which apparently are not being reflected at all in the 9-day VIX, which is always a weird sign. SPY at about 3.4 million contracts right now. The ADV 6 and about 3/4 million out there. So SPY looking decently robust as well. The SPX, it's like the land that time forgot, only 632,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV 1.78 million. So a surprising disconnect there between the S and SPY. And small caps outpacing IWM, or excuse me, small caps outpacing SPX, at least the IWM flavor, 625,000 contracts on the tape in IWM. You know what? That small cap ADV, IWM ADV, back up to pretty much a million again, 995,000. So we retreated away from that pretty quickly, and now we're right back up there, listeners over there. Let's get on out to what we're seeing from an overall top 10 most active today. You could probably guess what maybe is holding down the number one spot. Maybe. Can anything possibly unseat the dominance of Tesla and Apple? We shall find out in a little bit. By the way, you know, we're looking at a pretty robust day from a single name perspective today when we're at about 287,000 contracts to break into the top 10. That's right around that 300K barometer that I use to say, okay, you know what? We're seeing a pretty frothy day out there in the single names as well. Because looking at the index numbers, you don't really see anything really blowing the doors off of it outside of really a SPY and some small caps. Amazon right now, number 10, 287,000 contracts on the tape for Amazon. Number 9, Qualcomm, 310. So at number 9, we're already up over 300K. Usually on some quiet days, that could be, you know, number 4 could be at 300K. So pretty robust day out there. Qualcomm, 310,000 contracts. Number 8, it's PayPal. 335,000 contracts. It's like Facebook is just dragging a lot of names into the mud with them out there these days. Let's see where PayPal is hanging out right now. They're off about 6% right now. So taking a bit of a drubbing out there as well. I think they had some numbers that weren't exactly robust out there as well. It's worst ever trading day yesterday. So yeah, rough times for PayPal. Number 7, NVIDIA. 368,000 contracts. A day that ends in Y, you're going to see some chip names in here. We've already seen Qualcomm, NVIDIA here. And right behind them, number 6, AMD, 507,000. They're usually good for a number 4, number 3 spot, but today down to number 6. And they've still done 507,000 contracts. That shows you kind of how active the top half of our top 10 is today. Number 5, it's good old Ford, listeners. They're kind of acting like a meme a lot these days. Selling off about 2.3%, still north of the 20 handle right now, listeners. They, of course, have earnings after the bell today, so you're probably going to see some muted reaction from them until we see that number later today. How are all these Lightnings and F-150s? How's the chip shortage impacting them? A lot of things to keep an eye on, but already 659,000 contracts on the tape for Ford. That's nothing to sneeze at. Number 4, it's Snap. Yeah, we were talking about them earlier. They're feeling the reflective fire from Facebook out there as well, taking a hit as well, off 21, almost 21.5% right now, trading right around the 25.25 level or so, but still good for 662,000 contracts out there. We don't even have the Snap earnings yet. People are just crushing them in anticipation after what Facebook said out there. So Snap, yeah, by the way, who uses Snap out there? Hit us up, let us know if you do. It seems like TikTok has really eaten all of their lunch out there in the tween social media set out there. Number 3, I said, yes. When was the last time we said Apple was number 3, listeners? But here they are today. Apple kind of just waiting and seeing, watching the rest of the market today at number 3. Only 733,000 contracts on the tape. Apple is almost unched on the day. Apple's kind of shrugging all this news off. They're kind of watching it saying, look what we did to you, Facebook. Which, by the way, I'm an Android guy, but I had to get a new iPad for Christmas since I was setting it up recently. And it is kind of surprising how aggressive Apple is with that stuff of, do you want this app to track you? They pretty much put it in your face every time. So much so that all these apps are now kind of begging you. They're like, hey, please please enable this. We need this for our business and everything. So you could easily see, if you're even the mighty Facebook, if you're living on someone else's platform, you live at their behest and at their whim, and they could turn the screws against you in a second. Apple clearly doing that right now. Not only 733,000 contracts on the tape. That's roughly half of what we might see in a day like today for Apple. So Apple kind of quiet. Number 2 is Tesla. Yes, number 2 out there. Tesla, 934,000 contracts, bucking the trend. Actually up today, back over the 900 handle again today. Not quite at that 1,000 level, right around a little bit shy of 920 right now, but still good for 934,000 contracts. And number 1 out there, you probably guessed it. It's the big dog today. It's Facebook getting annihilated, 26%, 239 and change out there right now, off about 84 handles on the day. Good for almost 1.6 million contracts, listeners. That is nothing to sneeze at. What are your thoughts on Facebook, given all this just aggressive nature of the sell-off? You like Uncle Mike? Would you take a long-term stock position here? You like the Rock Lobster? You want a little bit more downside? I think you said you wanted to sell 70 handles. That's not like the Rock Lobster to be greedy or nothing. 70 handles more he wants. But after getting 84 already in the overnight. But c'est la vie. Are you selling some out-of-the-money puts here in Facebook? You think this is dead money for the next 6 months or so as well? Or is this perhaps the start of something interesting? What do you think about what Apple's doing to them and how that's playing out? A lot to unpack there in the world of Facebook. Speaking of earnings, let's just crunch some of the numbers. All these reports, listeners, the earnings move results, the earnings season, and the newly minted earnings trades reports, all available for you folks anytime you want over there at theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the options news and articles tab to find them there. All the latest hot off the presses right from our friends at Oratz right before showtime, because it is a big week, listeners. We had everyone's favorite, Otis Elevators, on Monday. Huge name. Tuesday, we had Exxon, UPS, PayPal, Alphabet, and GM, as well as good old S-Bucks and Electronic Arts. Yesterday, of course, Meta and Spotify. Today, we have Merck, Amazon, Ford, Snap, and Eli Lilly, as well as Activision Blizzard and the old WWE popping off after the bell today. And, of course, the earnings, not exactly robust. The earnings move results reports, hot off the presses from our friends at Oratz. Facebook, obviously, getting drubbed. They went into their announcement 323, listeners. And as of this report, they were at 246. Obviously, they've sold off since then as well. So they were pricing in a little less than 5%. They delivered 24% to the dark side. Of course, they're off 26% now. Spotify, they went into their announcement 191.92. They're pricing in 8.1%, and they delivered 14.6%. So nearly double that. Let's see where they're hanging out right now. Of course, Spotify in a bit of a kerfuffle now with the artists getting up in arms over there about all Joe Rogan, off nearly 17% now for Spotify. So yeah, more than doubling their straddle to the dark side out there. Let's look really quickly as well. Let's go to the drugs really quickly. Eli Lilly and Merck. Let's go to Merck first. They were this morning before the bell, $82 even is where they went into their announcement. They're pricing in 2.2%. They delivered, guess what? 2.2%. So nothing to look at here on the Merck front. Eli Lilly, they went into the announcement this morning as well, about 251. They're pricing in 3.3%. They delivered about 2.7%. So yet again, a bit of a shrug out there in the drug makers. Yesterday after the bell, we had Qualcomm, 188.20 is what they went into their announcement at. They're pricing in 5.6%. And so far, as of this report, listeners, they had delivered 2.7%. So obviously underperforming. Of course, if we change that frame of reference a bit, hold on to it a little bit longer, they've actually rallied a little bit since then. So they're actually off a little bit less right now. They're at about 184. They're at about 183 when they ran this report. So Qualcomm actually getting some of that back. So if you sold premium out there and held on to it, it's looking even worse right now. Let's go on out a little bit farther out. All right, we have a lot of other move results reports. You guys can check out all those dozens upon dozens of chickers for yourselves. Let's get on out to the season right now. We are in week 3, listeners. Week 1 was pretty robust, 101%. That compares to the long-term average of 82%, so decent outperformance there. Week 2 came in about 70% when it was all said and done. That's better still than the long-term average, 66%. And week 3 looking robust right now, 113%. So that means we are outperforming the straddles out there right now, listeners. And the average for this week is 91%. So the season's still looking decent at about 85%. And again, given the pandemic era, it's actually a pretty decent number. So check that out for yourselves as well. Let's go on out to the earnings trades reports. Yeah, we got some new ones, listeners. Matt and his team hard at work crunching the numbers for you. They look like they're buying some straddles out here, buying a bunch of straddles here and a bunch of different names, ALGN, CAH, RFP, selling some straddles out here as well. And yeah, and also some new straddles from this morning here. It looks like in Amazon, and actually no, a calendar. They bought a calendar in Amazon, and they bought some straddles and some other names. So earnings trades coming at you hot and heavy, listeners. They'll tell you the entry point. They'll tell you where they exit, how it performs, all sorts of great stuff. And again, we must like you folks. We give it to you all for free. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the earnings news, or I should say the options news and articles tab to begin your journey. Let's look really quickly at a couple of names that are popping off today. Then we got to keep on rolling. The Eye of Sauron is waiting for us here. We got Amazon after the bell today, 3,012. As of this report, they were pricing in $216.5. In the past, they've moved $116. So fully $100 worth of extra juice. Is that merited? I guess we'll find out. Activision after the bell, of course, they're kind of caught up in that deal now with Microsoft, so that's probably going to mute things a little bit. They're pricing in about $1.50. In the past, they've moved $3.70, so obviously pricing in a lot less juice. And Ford, everyone's looking at Ford right now. $20.63 when they crunched these numbers this morning. They were pricing in $1.55. In the past, they've moved 81 cents, so pretty much 2x what they've moved in the past. Kind of hard to argue against that for Ford. I lied. A couple more. Snap. $32 even as of this report. They're popping off after the bell today. They're pricing in $5. In the past, they moved 5.5. So actually a little bit less juice. We've already seen an apocalyptic move in Snap. So I guess the rest is just gravy at this point. And WWE after the bell today. 49.5 is where they were as of this report. They're pricing in $326. In the past, they moved $381. So a little bit less vol. Is there less vol in those wrestling waters out there? Hit us up. Let us know. Oh, one more. So I'm talking about vol. One more. I lied. One more. Tomorrow before the bell. CBOE. Talking about vol out there. CBOE. All about VIX. They were at 120 even as of this report. They're pricing in $333. In the past, they moved about $260. So a little bit extra, actually a fair amount of extra juice out there in CBOE land. Is that merited? They're going to put up the VIX numbers to merit these vol levels and these valuation levels. We shall find out tomorrow, listeners. Meanwhile, it's time to find out what our Eye of Sauron has found for us today. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we unleash the Eye of Sauron and we see what it has found for us today. A lot of people in our live chat here talking about Facebook. I can't blame you. There's some action in Facebook today, and it seems like our Eye of Sauron has also fixated upon Facebook today. In fact, Matt and his team at ORATS, they also run some unusual activity scans, and they've identified Facebook as the second highest name on their list today. They look at the volume today versus the 20-day moving average. They're at about 3x right now. So Facebook already had done, about a little over 1 million contracts when they ran this versus their normal average of about 369,000. So Facebook on a tier out there. Eye of Sauron looking at it today as well. A lot of paper flying fast and furious out there. A lot of rolling down of puts and things like that. But we try to find some of the needles in the haystack for you, listeners. Some of the interesting kind of opening new trades that are popping in the midst of all this chaos and the whirlwind out there. And our Eye of Sauron today landed on this one. They are the April 240 put. So it looks like someone perhaps is deciding on a little bit more downside here in good old FB. Of course, really quickly, I'll give you the year's saga in Facebook. A year ago, Facebook wasn't that far from where it is right now. It was at 266. Then it had a nice run, of course, all the way up to 384.33. That what came in first week of September of last year. And since then, it's had some chop, but it's mostly been to the downside. Even still, it was hanging out north of 300 until this week. It was at about 320 again until all this news broke. So now we're back to 238 and about a half as of right now. So selling off 10% now for the entire year. So interesting stuff out here. Looks like someone is a little bit spooked for some more continued downside because they were scooping up some puts, scooping up some pretty much at the money protection, now in the money protection here on the 240 strike, coming in and scooping up 5,860 of the April 240 puts. And since these are pretty much at the money puts, listeners, they paid a pretty penny for these right after the earnings announcement. They paid $15.80. That works out to about a 43 vol. So they pretty much lifted the offer on these. And, you're going to expect that right in the middle of an earnings apocalypse. Vol's going to be juicy. And that pretty much results in paying $16 for some at-the-money puts in Facebook here. The stock was a little bit higher at the time. Stock was $244.72. So it's gone their way since then. So that's going to help. Obviously, the vol, once we kind of reach the apex of the sell-off, the vol is going to start to peter out a little bit. So that's going to come back to bite them. But still, overall, I'll have to pull up, see how these puts are looking right now. But overall, the trend is their friend, at least for right now out here. By the way, the next earnings, if you're wondering, in Facebook, not until April 27th. So these puts, I'm going to go out on a limb and say April 27th is beyond. Let me look here. Yes, it is beyond April expiration. April expiration is on the 15th. So 27th, a few weeks beyond that. So these are not going to hedge you through the next earnings cycle. It just gets you pretty much close to it. And that's about it. So Mr. Rock Lobster, starting off your day, looks like the flight from Meta has begun, or at the very least, the concern over continued downside in Meta, because we got someone paying up a pretty penny for some April puts here in Facebook. What say you, sir?
Yeah, I have to say that's not my favorite trade right now.
How did I know that it wouldn't float your boat, sir?
I just put on a February 1x2 put spread in there, buying one, selling two, to get me my stock at 200. So I will take my small dollars because I think the stock will continue to be weak. But I don't know if it's going to be weak enough for those big fat puts to pay. That's my question. So it's again, buying those puts when the vol is super high. I have to say, it's not my, you have the day after earnings and volatility is up on the day, which I don't think is, it's usually not a recipe for success. So let's see. Although I'll eat my words, they're 240 puts. They are up $2.
Yeah, they're $18 right now. So they're looking all right on those.
So as our rule, the day after you buy them and they're up money on the close, that's always a good sign. So maybe I wonder when they bought these things. Do you have a stock reference? Oh, 244.72. So the stock's down $6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So stock has moved their way. Yes.
So they've got just for the earnings. So they bought a 40 delta, just out of 50 delta put, and they got about a $2 lift on a $6 move. So you can see that the volatility is coming in slightly on those puts already, but anyway, I still think the stock is going to be dead money for a while. I'd probably be a good long-term buy, but it's going to be a little bit jiggy here for, I think, a little while.
Yeah, from experience in my Intel days, when we had that mega sell-off, Intel pre-announced bad earnings and they got annihilated. And that was one of the first big tech names to do that back in the dot-com bubble. And once the stock kind of reaches the nadir of the sell-off, looks like Facebook maybe bottoming out here around 240 or so. Once it hits that and bounces off it a few times, the vol just craters. And so if that happens here in Facebook, looks like it might already be happening. These puts are going to come in. So they got their delta. It worked for them. They had about a 50 delta. They got $6 worth of movement. So you can do the math. They're going to get about $3 on these puts, listeners. But all things stay the same throughout the rest of the day. Obviously, we can take another leg down, and that could all change. But if things stay the same right now, this vol is probably going to crater pretty soon, and these puts probably would be back to not that far away from where they bought them, not that long from now, especially if we keep rallying out here. So interesting stuff. It's always difficult to kind of pick the moment when you should get in for the vol, listeners, right after the earnings of the apocalypse hits, because you got to kind of let it settle out a little bit and see where the stock settles out. Then you can kind of find your levels and start picking your levels there. But you do that ahead of time, you are quite literally catching a falling knife sometimes. So we'll see. We'll come back to these and see how they fare. We'll put them in our to-be watch. Meanwhile, let's go out to another name that's getting reflexively getting the crap kicked out of it today. They haven't even had earnings yet. People just think, oh, crap, if that happened to Facebook, this is going to happen to Snap too, because Snap just taking it on the chin. at about $25 right now, off nearly $7, about 21.5%. Let's look at the year that has been out there in Snap. By the way, you guys still use Snap? I think we have a Snap for Options Insight. I don't think we've ever even really used it. So I think we even have the spectacles lying around the studio here somewhere. I don't think we ever even fired them up. So never really got big on the Snap. But yeah, $59 is where it was a year ago, listeners. And then it had a nice journey. It bounced around the 50s to the 60s for the first half of the year. In July, it shot up from about $60 up to 78. And then it hovered around there, got up to its 52-week high on September 24th of about 83.34. And then ever since then, it never really looked back. It sold off again to about the low mid 70s on October 18th. Then they came for it hard in October. I'm guessing their earnings not the best. On October 21st, went from $75 down to 55 in one overnight session. So reminiscent of what we're seeing with Facebook right now. And then it kind of trended lower from there down to $28. Actually, $33 was where it was going into Facebook's number yesterday. And then, of course, back down to $25. So the tail of the tape, not exactly robust here for Snap. But you know what? Someone's saying this is overdone, listeners, because our Eye of Sauron has found us this morning. Someone betting on a bit of a long-term retracement, bit of a bounce here in Snap, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is to the tune of 3,000 of the Jan 30s going out next year, Jan 2023, for $4.65. They lifted the offer on these bad boys. Those are pretty beefy as well. The stock at the time was $25.11, so these were about $5 out of the money, and they paid another almost $5 for them. So they need a nice move here. That's about a 63 vol. So that is, again, that's a pretty robust vol level for Snap. But again, they're getting in ahead of earnings. Who knows? Maybe Snap could come out and blow the doors off, and they could be taking these calls off tomorrow. But still, intriguing stuff here. Mr. Rock Lobster, a bit of a flipping of the script after someone panicking to the downside in Facebook. This person saying, you know what? I'm going to play it cool. I'm going to play it loose. I'm going to spend some money, but I think I'm going to step in front of this freight train. I say Snap higher rather than lower by next January. What say you, sir?
Again, like you got this high vol and you're just paying out the wazoo for these calls. What was Snap? $55 at one point this year, I think.
Got up to 83.
Oh my God. Well, if you make that kind of rally again, I think that they're going to be looking pretty smart on the Jan 23 30s. Interesting. Well, let's see here. Well, according to our normal, the Jan 23 30s, they're right now they are doing okay. Their calls are on the bid. So, at least from a purchase point of view, the day they got in, it's not a terrible day. What I would say about these is, wow, they're just, God dang, it's just pricey. They're pricey options. What can I say? So, however, in a year, if the stock is $50, it's not going to matter. And they look relatively financeable. I mean, you can sell the 20 puts for $3.60. So, yeah, I mean, I say they have a shot based on what could happen, but that's not exactly, I think maybe it's a stock replacement, right? So let's say if you're long 50,000 shares or it looks like 300,000 deltas total on the trade. So maybe they were long stock and they wanted to do a replacement. Get rid of their stock and then buy maybe 3 times the delta in calls. So it could be a stock replacement strategy as well. I don't know, but that generally tends to bode well when everything looks just the darkest. Everybody wants to hide under their desk in technology today. Buying more deltas, maybe getting rid of your stock and buying more deltas is not a terrible idea. I'll say not terrible.
Not terrible. Interesting. I don't know if I like buying the deltas out of the money. Usually like a little bit meatier, but it's a $20 stock. I guess how much are you going to spend on these options? At a certain point, you just buy the stock. So yeah, but interesting stuff here with these. We'll come back to it. You like these, listeners? You're a fan of these? You think Snap's going to rebound here? You think this is all much ado about nothing? Would you be putting your money where your mouth is, or would you be perhaps looking at other trades out here? Speaking of looking at other trades, let's look really quickly. Mr. Rock Lobster, dial your Wayback Machine all the way back to the heady days of January 3rd, our first trading day of this year. Oh, we were all so young and innocent back then on January 3rd. We had never heard of a 4.25%, and then sell off in NASDAQ and then reversal on the same day, at least not for some time. All right, but now we've got, we were looking at the time on that show, listeners, some puts in a newcomer to the show. It was Sleep Number. At the time, someone came in and blasted out 4,369 of the Jan 70 puts in Sleep Number for 41 cents. That was below the bid. The bid was 45 cents, so they crushed these things. The vol was about a 47, and we didn't hate these, I don't think, but they were kind of interesting. And Mr. Rock Lobsters, they sold the 70 puts. Guess where the stock went out on expirations? Take a wild guess.
I'm going to just take, I'm not looking at it. I'm going to say just above the strike.
Close. Just below 69.82.
Oh, still, that's
pretty close. Yeah. So they went out pretty much exactly at the strike, a little bit in the money. Obviously, the puts went out at about, looks like about 18 cents, and he sold them for 41. So he pocketed a nice 23 cents, or he ended up buying the stock at about $69.59, which right now looks like a decent trade because the stock's up about $1 from there. It's about 70.5 right now. So he's now the proud owner of some Sleep Number at around 69.60 or so out there, listeners. Or you can look at it on the puts. He made about $100,000 on these bad boys. So not bad, all things considered, even though he had to sweat for it a little bit as we keep on rolling. We never have to sweat for your questions, though, because they're always awesome. And it's time for the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, let's get out there to the mail block, our live chat. Still talking about maybe some put selling here in Facebook, as well as the benefits that Facebook reaped from getting the AT&T losing the exclusivity to the iPhone. That was a big deal back in the day. We forget that when the early days, iPhone was exclusive to AT&T, and it sucked. I had an iPhone early in those days, and I got rid of it because it was terrible. But long water under the bridge at this point. Let's get on out here to what you folks are saying right now. We have a couple of questions of the week that are live right now. Get in there if you haven't already at Options. Make your voice heard. We asked you guys, what are your preferred trades in high skew environments? I'll just run these down really quickly because we're kind of coming up against it. We've got long puts or spreads or collars, short puts, spreads, or bullish risk reversal. So selling the put, buying the call, put butterflies / ratios or other, and selling the puts / spread / bullish risk reversals, easy for me to say, is winning right now with a whopping 56% of the vote, about 19% for the other side, long puts or collars, and then a tie 12.5% for put flies and other. Again, if you choose other, tell us what your other is. We like to hear it. Maybe you have some esoteric strategy that we have never heard of. Probably not, but you never know. It's always fun. And we also have another question of the week. A lot of you are starting to scoop up some of these hot pandemic names that are kind of trading at, shall we say, lower levels right now. Which of these former high flyers are you thinking about adding to your turnaround or bargain hunting portfolios right now? Gave you 3 choices and the other. Gave you Peloton, Robinhood, AMC, and then the much beloved other. For other, we've got Rocket. A lot of people wrote in for Rocket, as well as DraftKings and Space and some others. So, yeah, we probably should have added Rocket, maybe given I don't know, Dan was talking about Rocket yesterday in boot camp as well. So a lot of you like yourself some Rocket. But right now, the winner of our poll is Robinhood, 61%, followed by 22% for AMC, 11% for Peloton, and about almost 6% for others. So get out there. You got about a day left. Get out there at Options if you haven't done so already, listeners, and make your voice heard. Speaking of making your voice heard, we got a question here from Ellis. Actually, a funny one. He says, Uncle Mike hates crypto. Well, we all know that. He's made his views very clear. He says, what about the Rock Lobster? So Mr. Rock Lobster, he wants to know, what are your thoughts on crypto? You hate it like Uncle Mike, or do you love it?
I don't hate it. I don't love it. I just ignore it. I think it's all just going to be a big puddle.
Oh, take a stand and get on the field, you water boy. You come on.
I just think it's a fad. It's going to go away. You know, it's
then
nothing.
You hate it.
Huh?
Then you hate it.
I guess so. I hate it. There you go. He's going to make me say, it's not that I hate it. I just ignore it. I ignore it. It doesn't even get on my radar screen.
So you're not hodling a bunch of Shiba like the rest of us here? I know Uncle Mike's got a ton of secret Shiba. A lot of our listeners do. So you're not Shiba Inuing over there on the shores of Maine, Mr. Rock Lobster?
I'm not yet, and I'm thrilled that some people have made, untold millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on it. Congratulations, but I did not. So it's like one of those things. I don't get it, so I don't get it. I don't trade it. I don't look at it. I've traded coin a little bit, made some money in that underlying, but that's about it.
So Mr. Rock Lobster, not a hodler. We know Uncle Mike's not a hodler, but Mr. Rock Lobster, not a hodler as well. We got more questions, but you know what? We got to get to it as we go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until our next episode. Let's go out to the unclest of Mike's, who never sits on the fence when it comes to crypto. He is now the proud owner of BitcoinSucks.com. I do believe he's shelled out for that one, about 25 grand. So, Uncle Mike, A, was it worth the purchase? And then B, what else is on your radar, sir?
You know what? I'm just going to maybe I should just buy Bitcoin now because I've hated it so much. Maybe just the psychology in me makes me want to like it. So who knows?
You know what you should do? You should buy some BITO options. You could collar them pretty nicely out there. You have some options you can do with them. And at least you have something you could talk about on the show. Bitcoin, you kind of just got a holder. I can't really do much with it, right? But you trade some BITO, you could trade some options around it, and it gets a little more interesting. What do you think?
I think I'll pass, actually. Upon further review, I think I'll pass.
No 2-year collars in BITO? What's going on?
I don't know. Well, what I am looking at right now is that we've been holding the 4,500 mark in the SPX throughout the day. So I'm going to be watching towards the end of the day to see if we can hold that, as well as tomorrow. We have non-farm. I think that whenever you're by a key number like this, it's something that we need to keep an eye on. So definitely watching that. Watching the 10-year note, we're having a little bit of a sell-off today on it. So seeing if we're towards the bottom of the range again. And so seeing if we can bounce back from that. And that's pretty much it right now.
And that music means we're coming up against it here, listeners. But don't worry. If you're saying I need more in my ear holes, special treat just for you, listeners. And because Uncle Mike is a prima donna. Guess who's joining me on TWIFO coming up next? It's the Uncleist of Mike's, and we're going to give you a surprise treat. No waiting in the live chat or anything like that. Going to go right into TWIFO after this show, so stay tuned for that, listeners. Should be fun. Listening after the fact, then, of course, just hit next. It'll be available on your platform of choice immediately there. But Mr. Rock Lobster, same question for you. What are you keeping an eye on for the rest of this week, at least until maybe ball views tomorrow? And then if folks want to hit you up, reach out to you, where should they go? What should they do?
You can come on optionpit.com, and what am I looking at? If VIX holds, we're in the danger zone again. If it holds this, if this Facebook sell-off becomes something worse. So a very key level right there. 4,500, 24 VIX, key level.
And where should they go if they want to learn more from the Mr. Ballman?
Yes, optionpit.com. Remember, 10% off anything you order. You say, you go call Ted, 888-TRADE-01, and you call Ted, 10% off anything at Option Pit. If you tell him that you heard me on this show, there you go.
Can you call Ted whatever you want? What if you insult his mother? Will he still give you the 10% off?
Ted has pretty thick skin. However, I think be nice to Ted.
Okay, be nice to Ted. You want the discount after all, so be nice to Ted. Don't just call him whatever you want.
Correct.
Optionpit.com to learn more. Remember, of course, I'll be joined again by the Rock Lobster tomorrow night for all you Secret Club fans, breaking down all these crazy trades we have. Our portfolio for doing that show of Options Oddities continues to grow, listeners. Of course, Rock Lobster bailed on some of his. We got to give him a hard time. That'll come up tomorrow after Ball Views, so stay tuned for that. And, of course, Mr. Uncle Mike, we're going to hear you again in a little bit on TWIFO, but for those folks just listening to the Option Block right now, they want to check out the Uncleist of Mike's on all your various platforms. Where should they go? What should they do?
A couple things. I have some videos that I've released on YouTube. I have some more recorded, but I still need to release them at this point. Just getting some things finished up at this stage. Type in St. Charles Wealth Management. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. I did not get enough new followers, so I will not be doing a webinar on Row. But if I do get 100 new followers in the next week or so, I will do a webinar on Row if that's what the people want. And also, feel free to check out my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you're looking to work with a financial advisor who works with the option product very frequently.
Well, that poll has 1 minute left, listeners. I'm going to retweet his poll again really quickly. Should he do the webinar on Row? Get in there, make your voice heard right now. 74% of you saying they want their webinars. Uncle Mike, the people have spoken. I don't know. You're kind of flying in the face of the demands of the people. Get out there on Twitter right now, listeners, and vote in that poll. We have retweeted it for you if you want that webinar. And give them a follow while you're at it, at Mike TOSAW, all one word, TOSAW. We got to get on out of here. But like I said, if you're listening live, back again instantaneously in your ear holes with a little bit of This Week in Futures options, and then back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, Volatility Views. Right after that for Options Oddities. Then back again next Monday, another episode of the Option Block. We'll see you then.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.